I think this initiative has taken some time to take off, right? Because in the first year, it was an effort to convince the participants of the value of such a forum. Right? Last year, we homed in very quickly on an issue of important substance, the financing for development, right? And that gained a lot of support and credibility. So this year, when we talk about localization of the SDGs, I think the discussion you can see is already different from last year, because this year what I see is that we brought out a lot of good practices, from ASEAN countries themselves, and how they have, dealt with the issue of localization of the SDGs. So I think every year I see progress, in terms of the quality of discussion and the quality of the cases and the experiences that are being shared. So I think we're getting, a step further every time to more concrete, initiatives and project ideas. This year, for example, we already floated the idea of a regional initiative on localization of SDGs in ASEAN that will try to put concrete project activities on the ground as a follow-up to this conference. So it's a long answer to your short question, but we are also searching, how we can be more effective through this very important partnership. We need to recognize the fact that we're just not talking once a year. A lot of actions are taking place every day, right, before we meet and after we meet. So, for example, this example of Indonesia, right, through presidential decrees, to set up the institutional framework for implementing and localizing SDGs from national level to local level, and every day, right, is a very good example of actions taking place, in the country and at local level. So we're just not talking, once a year. And this forum is an opportunity for experiences to come out, for countries to learn from each other, right? Yesterday, many of our delegates spent half a day under the sun, right, in 4 tents, to learn how, Cambodia is practicing national consultations at the local level, right? So there's a saying today now that, okay, we had a 1 day outdoor meeting, right? And we had 1 day of indoor meeting. So the kind of, different practices are coming out, and the countries are benefiting from each other. And so I think, it's not just a annual conference. It is about a culmination of a lot of things that are happening at country level over the last year, and probably foretell what will come, over the next year. So we'll keep your question in mind, of not losing our sight on actions. It is a tough question, okay? Financing for development, it's a bigger question. I think last year we focused on this issue of financing, right? And for most of our countries in ASEAN, we did this development finance assessment, right, to look at the totality of financing flows, for development. It showed very clearly that for most of our countries, public finance will only account for 30 to 40% of what's needed. So most of the money will come from private sources, both domestically and internationally, right? So that's why part of this discussion today, is about innovative ways of financing for development. We're talking about finding ways in partnerships to crowd in private sector funding, right, from the financial market, from investment communities, right, from foreign direct investments, through, for example, industrial parks or other projects. So I think it is a question that we need to look at it. If you look at our countries, some countries, have clearly indicated how much percentage of the financing will come from domestic resources, right? Some countries, have already legal frameworks for, innovative types of financing, right? For countries like Indonesia, one of the, Islamic countries in ASEAN, right? We are seeing very concerted efforts to use Islamic financing, right, to leverage Islamic financing for development, and we already see concrete projects at the local level that are co-financed by traditional government finance, but also by Islamic financing at the local level. So we are in the third year of implementation for SDGs. Right? You can say that we're at the early stages of implementation, but it's already the third year, right? So the sense of urgency is important. So and we do have impact investing project that we are now working with several countries to establish country-specific financing platforms for impact investing. We have this in Bangladesh, right? We have this in Sri Lanka, in Cambodia, right? In India, and in China, right? And more. So in the Philippines, for example, our country office is also working on impact investing initiatives. So we can see more and more, efforts are being made, But we just need to keep your question in mind, to really look at the volume, the impact, and the scale, right? The single most important message is to leave no one behind, right? So while ASEAN, as a whole, have reduced the extreme poverty to the level of 7% only, right? But if you look at a high level of poverty line, just above, extreme poverty, you can see that the poverty rate is in the range of mid-20%. Okay, right. So I think, and also ASEAN has countries that has the highest level of per capita income among all ASEAN developing countries, right? Such as Singapore, certainly, right, and also Malaysia, right. But then you have countries that has the lowest level of income of all ASEAN countries, right. So, such as Laos, Cambodia, although Cambodia has now attained the lower middle income country status, right? So we have to really pay attention to the issue of inequality, right? And so that, we focus on eliminating this inequality and at least not letting it, widen, right? And so really, how we can work together to take care of those who are vulnerable, to deal with all kind of shocks and disasters, climate change impact, is something that we really need to pay attention to.